Hey everyone, it's Bill here again and welcome to tutorial number 15 in my series for complete beginners on the piano. If you're coming in brand new to this series, don't forget to check out the earlier tutorials, okay? You'll find a link to the playlist in the description field right underneath this video. Also remember to subscribe to my channel using the little red button that you can see in the bottom right hand corner of the video screen here. Now in this tutorial we're going to be doing two things. First off, we're going to play through the piece that you've been practicing from tutorial 14, only this time with my hands visible so you can check that you've been getting things right. But then we're going to spend most of the lesson working on a brand new piece, and one that's actually pretty famous in the world of classical piano music. It's called Minuet in G and it's by Johann Sebastian Bach. Although actually, it's not by Bach, but we'll think about that little conundrum when the time comes. Okay, so we've got quite a bit to cover. Let's get going. So let's just run through this piece from tutorial 14, which, if you remember, is in 6/8 time, because in that previous tutorial we were looking at compound time signatures. Let me just play it through. So keep practicing that piece if you feel you haven't quite got it down as smoothly as you'd like yet. What we're going to do now is move on and look at Minuet in G, officially, as I said, by J.S. Bach, but actually probably not by him. We'll discuss that in a second. First of all, let's play through it. Now, as usual, you can find the score in this tutorial's PDF, which is linked in this description text beneath the video. Now, Minuet in G is actually a pretty tricky beast, yeah? I'm starting to really stretch you here because we're getting well into the series. But to get us off to a good start, I'm going to play it through twice. Once with the score up on screen and once so that you can see my hands, okay? And then we'll discuss it in detail. So let's start off by just playing it with the score up in front of us. By the way, I'm not going to bother with the repeat marks. You'll see that the first 16 bars are repeated and then the second 16 bars are repeated too, yeah? For now, I'm just going to play right through as if the repeat marks weren't there. Here we go. And now let's take the score down and I'll play it through again. There we go, cool. Hopefully you like the piece, by the way. I mean, if you're interested in becoming like a rock star or something, clearly you're not going to be playing Bach all the time. But this kind of thing is incredibly useful for getting things like finger and hand independence going. So stick with it. It's actually a surprisingly satisfying piece to play too, once you kind of get it under your hands. Before we go on, let's just get to the bottom of who this thing is actually by. Minuet in G is famous because it was included in a collection of keyboard music called the Anna Magdalena Notebook that J.S. Bach compiled for his second wife, Anna Magdalena Bach. Note that I'm talking about keyboard music, by the way, and not piano music, because although the very first pianos were beginning to appear during Bach's lifetime, the most common keyboards were things like, harpsichords and spinets and other instruments like that, most of which use very different technologies from the piano, but that's something to talk about another time. Anyway, for years and years and years and years, people assumed that because Bach had included it in the book, and because it's actually pretty nice, he'd actually written it. But about 50 years ago, it was discovered that it was actually written by somebody else, a guy from Dresden called Christian Petzold. Now, before you say OMG, does that mean Bach stole this thing? It's worth bearing in mind that in those days, copyright didn't exist, and people were generally a lot less fussed about attributing particular works to particular composers. We didn't have this myth that grew up in the kind of 19th century, really, of the great genius composer, Even Bach himself in his lifetime was actually better known as a performer, in fact as an improviser and as a choir master, better known as those things than as a composer. So there we go, Minuet by G used to be by J.S. Bach, officially nowadays by Christian Petzold. Just goes to show that just because nobody's ever heard of you doesn't mean you can't write great tunes. Okay, that's enough music history for one day. Let's have a look at some of the stuff that is actually going on here. Now, it's worth saying about this score that I've actually edited it quite a bit. And in fact, most versions of Minuet in G, or any music that you find from this era, most versions will be edited in some way, okay? They will very rarely be in the exact form that Bach or Petzold or whoever wrote them down. Now, among the things I've done is put in some fingering, okay? I've put in the tempo marking and I've put in some phrase marks. The other thing that I've tried to do is to beam the quavers really, really clearly, okay? I'm trying to show in every bar that there are 3 beats in the bar. Now in 3/4, if I wanted to, say if I had a run of 6 quavers like this, as in bar 21, I could just beam them all together, okay, in a group of 6, or as in bar 15, 16, 17 here, if I had a crotchet and 4 quavers, I could beam those 4 quavers together. But I've stuck for now to the beaming in pairs so that you can count the beat really, really easily throughout. There are a few other little things to watch out for that we've covered in past tutorials. So we've got things like these staccato notes that you need to play with a slight bounce. And remember, if you get a staccato note at the end of a phrase, remember to give it a good clear slur. And that's the only thing that's really new now, apart from these funny little wiggly lines that we'll be coming to, and this little miniature quaver now. We'll be solving the mystery of those in a second. Something that is fairly new though is what's going on down here in bars 25 and 26. What's all this weird stuff with, like, crotchet rest over the minim, and these notes with their stems going in different directions and stuff like that. Basically what's happening here is that we have in the left hand 2 voices being played, okay? For these 2 bars in the bass line, we're briefly carrying 2 separate lines of music, both to be played in the same hand. A lower voice, which in bar 25 is minim B followed by crotchet B, and an upper one, which in the same bar is as crotchet rest followed by a minim D. Let me show you what that means in practical terms. Basically, if you look at bar 25 in the score, we're playing in the left hand the B with our third, comes in on the first beat. Then the D in the upper voice comes in on beat 2. So we play that while we're holding down the B in voice 1 because it's still sounding, it's a minim down there. And then in beat 3, that upper voice, D, is still sounding because it was a minim that came on. So we keep holding that down while we play the second crotchet B in the lower voice with our 4th finger. Yeah, we've got a finger change in there. Okay, so just let me count that. We've got 1, 2, 3. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, actually, relatively simple, but it can be quite a difficult thing to get your brain to grasp at first, because once you're holding down some notes in one hand but playing others, you can kind of get a bit of brain freeze, and you're suddenly thinking, oh, which note should I be holding down, and you actually try to hold down more notes. Sometimes a funny thing that happens, and this happens to me, is if I'm playing 2 voices in the left hand, then notes in the right hand want to stick down when they shouldn't, okay, and I can't lift my fingers up, yeah? So it does take a little bit of adjustment, and it will be difficult at first. The score helps you a little bit, by the way, by pointing the stems of the different voices in different directions, okay? So the lower voice has the stem going down, you'll see if you look at bar 25 and 26 as well, and the upper voice has stems going up. And in that upper voice, because the first beat, nothing's happening in the upper voice, there's a rest there. Okay, so the score does try to make it as clear as possible. If you're a bit unsure about all this, just copy what I'm doing for now. Okay, wheel back and look at the video of me playing it again. Copy what I'm doing and get to grips with it as best you can. It is difficult, but it's really good for you to practice this stuff, yeah? And we are going to look at it again in coming tutorials. Next up, let's have a look at some of these funny little wiggly things that we've got over some of the notes. When I was playing through, you might have noticed that whenever I came to one of these little symbols, I didn't play the note underneath it exactly as written. Okay? Now, these belong to a class of thing that we call decorations or ornaments, yeah? And although ornaments are relatively uncommon in modern piano music, they were pretty popular in Bach's day. Now, there are several types of decoration, ornament, call them what you like, and this one is called an inverted mordant, yeah? Kind of a catchy name. The best way to think of it is just as a little twiddle. Yeah, you might have, as I say, you might have heard me playing them when I played through the piece. All you do with an inverted mordant, when you come across one, is play the note that's written, then the note immediately below it, usually the scale note below it, and then the note again, all in the space occupied by the original note. So, for example, if you say, if you see a crotchet C with an inverted mordant sign above it, you know, there's one at the start of bar 5, you just play this, which is basically taking the original crotchet, the original quarter note, and turning it into something like 2 semiquavers and a quaver. Now that kind of begs the question, you know, Petzold, Bach, whoever wrote this thing, why not just write the notes out? Why not just write in CBC, semiquaver, semiquaver, quaver, in the actual score, you know, rather than messing about with little sort of inverted mordant signs? That's basically because inverted mordants, like all decorations, are actually kind of optional and often semi-improvised. Back in Bach's day, back in Petzold's day, it would have been entirely at the discretion of performers where to put these things in. Yeah, lots of players today add their own or don't add them, and the ones that I've put into the score really are just suggestions. They're kind of logical places for them, but you know, if you look at other editions of this same piece, you might see them in different places. Now, one of the cool things about ornaments, decorations, is that they give you a simple way of cranking the difficulty of a piece up or down. So if you find Minuet in G hard work at first, just miss out the decorations, miss out the ornaments, and play the notes exactly as written. You know, you don't have to include the twiddles. By the way, I should say, if you come across one of these inverted mordant signs without a vertical line through it, you know, if it's just a little wiggle, then that's a regular mordant, and instead of twiddling on the original note and the note below, you use the original note and the note above. Yeah, there aren't any here, but that's kind of a just so you know. By the way, there's one other kind of decoration in this piece. In bar 8, you can see that the main note is a dotted minim, a dotted half note on A. Now, as you know, a dotted minim has 3 beats and we're in 3/4 time, so therefore it should fill the whole bar. But in front of it is this kind of mini quaver on the B. What's that? Okay. That's what we call an appoggiatura, and it's a type of grace note, a note that comes in just ahead of the main melody note. Now, usually with appoggiaturas, we make them quite long, okay? There's another type called an acciaccatura, which is played really quickly, yeah? It's just basically a crush note. But traditionally, an appoggiatura takes up to half of the length of the note it precedes. Exactly how much length it takes, though, is up to you, and that's why it's written as a grace note, as a decoration. You get to take the musical decision, yeah? But probably the simplest thing to do is to play it about the length of the quaver, as I did. Okay, but you could make it longer, or even maybe a little bit shorter. You'd probably go longer than that. A quaver length is about probably as short as you would go, yeah? But it's very much up to you. And again, if you're trying to make the piece a bit easier for yourself, don't play it. Just miss it out, and then as you get better at the piece, put it in at that point. So what I want you to do now is go away and work at this thing. As I said, it's supposed to be challenging. I'm really trying to stretch you here. So don't be surprised if you spend a long time, like a week or more, just playing the two hands separately, yeah? I'm going to be assuming that you'll be chipping away at this for a while, okay? So I'm not going to include another piece in tutorial 16, okay? Look at this, look on this as kind of a project, like an exam piece or something for the next few weeks. If you get to a point where you can play it pretty fluently, then you can be really pleased with yourself. Even if you don't, you'll have learned an enormous amount just by working through it. Just while I'm on the subject, a couple of people recently have asked me about memorization, yeah? I'll just say something quickly about that. If you practice these pieces to the extent that the whole piece or either hand is in your memory and you can play it without looking at the score, then that's not a problem. In fact, that's good, yeah? But for now, just make sure that even if you've memorized it, make sure that you do read along with the score as best you can as you play, even though your fingers know exactly what's coming next, and even if you're kind of visually skimming what's on the paper, yeah? Doing that should really help you reinforce your learning of how to read a score and improve your sight reading. When you're ready to put your hands together, as with all the pieces we've looked at, take it nice and slow and steady and expect it to be hard. Embrace the difficulty, okay? And remember, you'll tend to make progress in fits and starts rather than at a steady rate. Okay, so that's it for tutorial 15. As I said, in the next tutorial, we're not going to be looking at a piece, but instead we're going to be learning some broken chords, which are pretty cool and pretty useful. In the meantime, keep practicing hard, keep practicing your scales, the new piece, the whole lot. And if you're not already subscribed to my channel, do please hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to follow me on Facebook and Twitter. The links, along with everything else, are in the description field right underneath this video. Also, if you want to support what I'm doing here, don't forget to check out my Patreon crowdfunding campaign at www.patreon.com/BillHilton. Even if you just put in like $1 a video, that adds to the total and means I can spend more time making piano tutorials for you guys and everyone else who follows my channel. Happy practicing, and I will see you in tutorial number 16.